So, Magic Arena is officially releasing, and to celebrate, Wizards of the Coast decided to make a play any deck win every card event, and I gotta give it to you, Wizards, this is a pretty cool way to launch Magic Arena. And although winning 12 games in a best of 1 is going to be extremely difficult to realistically pull off, just being able to use every card is a good way to introduce new players to the game, which I think is their goal. Anyways, with Throne of Eldraine releasing not too long ago and the Win Every Card event coming up soon, people have been brewing like crazy. And this is what I love about a new set release. The really cool brews that people create while trying to solve the format. So today, I'm going to be going over the top 5 standard brews that I'm going to really enjoy playing. Just a note, these are still super early lists, and I doubt any of them are fully refined, so expect some parts of the list to change over time. And as always, if you have your own list and recommendations, feel free to let me know in the comments below. For each deck, I'm going to go over 4 things. First, I'm going to go over the main focus of the deck. Second, I'm going to go over the main cards of the deck. Third, I'm going to summarize why each deck is good. And finally, I'll provide some quick points to help you decide whether or not the deck is for you. The first deck I have on my list is Red Black Aggro from Martin Juza. The general idea behind this deck is to keep playing an incredibly consistent, threatening curve of early creatures. This deck benefits a lot from 2 new Throne of Eldraine cards, Murderous Rider and Bone Crusher Giant. Murderous Rider is just going to overperform the standard, and I wouldn't be surprised if it became a staple card in the format. It's currently being called the upgraded version of Hero's Downfall, which, for those of you who don't know, was a standard powerhouse back in the day. Murderous Rider is going to be perfect for dealing with prevalent threats in the format such as Questing Beast and Oko. Also, losing 2 life isn't going to be that big of a deal since this deck is going to be pressuring our opponents most of the time. Bone Crusher, on the other hand, just has great stats and is an amazing beater. The adventure mechanic just adds so much value to this aggro deck and makes it feel like it never runs out of steam. Anyways, let's talk about some other key creatures in our deck. Knight of Ebon Legion and Gutterbones are our 1-drops and are just really good value creatures. We want them to come out early and we want them to attack our opponents as much as possible. In our 2-drop slot, we have Dreadhorde Butcher and Robber of the Rich. Dreadhorde is a fine card and I will usually always find value with it, and really it only looks bad if our opponents can block it early. Robber of the Rich will figure fairly consistently and helps provide a good source of card advantage for our deck. Rotting Regisaur helps fill up our 3-drops and hits incredibly hard super early, and if your opponents don't have an answer, you're going to win faster than its effect is going to harm you. Also, since we're trying to be aggressive, we probably want to be playing out our whole hand anyways. Spawn of Mayhem is a stat monster, and there aren't many cards in the format that can deal with a 4/4 Flying Trampler. On the other hand, Rankle is one of the cards I had trouble evaluating at first, but then ended up firmly deciding that it's super good. Although its effect seems magical, most of the time it's going to harm your opponent way more than it's going to harm you. Plus, you don't always have to activate if you don't want to. Quick tip, Rankle is actually a rogue, so it can trigger Robber of the Rich. For lands, in our deck we're going to run 23 lands, 8 of them being mountains, 10 swamps, and 4 blood crypts. So, why is this deck good? Well, number 1, it has a lot of hasty threats to pressure our opponents, and it deals with planeswalkers pretty well. Number 2, it has 2 new cards in the form of Bone Crusher Giant and Murderous Rider and adds immense value to keep our deck going. And number 3 has a really strong curve. So, is this deck for you? Well, it might be if you enjoy playing a creature-based aggro deck in Standard, if haste is your jam, or you just don't like the hassle of cards in your hand. So our next deck today is Green-Black Midrange from Reid Duke. Now, Green-Black Explorer recently was rotating out, so we are looking to fill up that void, and Reid's got quite the brew for it. In this deck, the focus is to control the game early so that we can play our bonker planeswalkers in the late game. Now, which planeswalkers am I talking about? Well, our main powerhouse planeswalker includes the brand new Garruk Cursed Huntsman and Liliana Dreadhorde General. Garruk is just insane. His 0 activation of creating 2 blockers is going to be way too hard to keep up with and protects Garruk very well. His -3 is strong removal that you want in Golgari, and his -6 just wins games straight up. Liliana, on the other hand, is just... I mean, look at that, the text. Like, she is just a value engine and has immediate value the turn you play her. We also have 2 copies of Nissa, who shakes the world, and 1 copy of Vraska, both of which are strong in their own right. Anyways, for our early drops, we have Incubation Druid and Paradise Druid, which helps us ramp into bigger spells. Leyline Prowler helps us ramp as well, but has an added benefit of Death Touch and Lifelink, which can be useful against aggressive matchups. Once Upon a Time is just an awesome addition, and it just makes our deck more consistent. In this build, Reid also included strong mid-range creatures to act as a bridge between our early drops and our late-game planeswalkers. Questing Beast is a new card from Throne of Eldraine, and it just has a crazy amount of text. It's used offensively, defensively, and can even help deal with planeswalkers. Voracious Hydra is just a flexible card that scales well into the late game, acting as a removal spell or a big beater. Speaking of removal spells, it wouldn't be green-black Golgari if we didn't add in a good chunk of removal spells. We also get to see Murderous Rider yet again, but this time we're using it as a way to combo with another card in our deck, Once Upon a Time. What this means is that although Once Upon a Time is supposed to help us make a more consistent mana base / creature curve, we can also use it as a way to find removal because Murderous Rider is technically a creature. Some other removal spells include Legion's End for our early game, Assassin's Trophy to deal with pretty much anything, Death Sprout to help us ramp into our 6 drops, and Final Finale to grab back our creatures from the graveyard or clear the board. Finishing our deck are the lands, which include Overgrown Tomb, Temple of Malady, Fabled Passage, Castle Lochlane, and some basic lands. So why is this deck good? Well, late game Planeswalkers will just take over the game, so once we get there, we're pretty much set for the win. Once Upon a Time makes this deck super consistent, and this card is just going to make sure that we always get the hand that we want and always find the pieces we need. And lastly, this deck has a lot of flexibility, finding a great balance between threats and answers. Now, this deck is for you if Midrange is your preferred playstyle, if you like having a lot of value for your cards, or if you just enjoy attrition-style games. Our third deck is Bant Wolves Food, made by Andrea Mengucci. Now, I know a lot of people have been already tinkering with this archetype, but I found that this particular build was most enjoyable to play. For this deck, the main focus is going to be getting our Wolf engine out as soon as possible. What exactly am I talking about? Let me explain. Oko, King of Thieves is the first card in our deck, and he turned out to be arguably one of the strongest cards to come out of Throne of Eldraine. Now, Oko is just able to deal with any threat and starts off with such a high loyalty, which makes him very difficult to remove, especially if played early on turn 3. He's able to create food tokens, which keeps us alive throughout the game, and combos perfectly with our first wolf, Wicked Wolf. Wicked Wolf and Oko just go hand in hand, since Wicked Wolf just gets bigger, while also remaining indestructible if there are food tokens lying around. This engine is going to be super hard to deal with, and there's more. In this deck, we also have Tolsmir, Friend to Wolves, which is going to grant us so much life and fight triggers as the game progresses. A good thing to note is that the synergy between Tolsmir and Wicked Wolf. If Tolsmir is on the battlefield and we play Wicked Wolf, we get to deal 4 damage to 2 creatures. Talk about removal. To finish off our Wolf package, we have Night Pack Ambusher, which is simply just going to run away with games and provide even more enter the battlefield triggers for Tolsmir. The rest of our creatures include early mana ramp in the form of Gilded Goose and Paradise Druid, and finally Questing Beast, which is just a strong card in any green deck. In terms of spells, we have Once Upon a Time again for consistency, Golden Egg to help us go through our deck while also being a food, and the Great Hand, which is going to make all our creatures and tokens get bigger once we have them enter the battlefield. So why is this deck good? Well, the Wolf engine value alongside Oko is just going to be crazy. It's a crazy value engine that's just going to make us and push us way ahead of the game. And number 2, our deck can be really hard to catch up to. It can be hard for some decks to deal with the massive amount of life gain we have. So this will just be really good once we get our value engine online. So is this deck right for you? Well, it can be. If you like going wide and gaining life, this deck is perfect for doing that. And number 2, this is one of the chances we actually get to play Wolves in Standard, and it actually is legit. So if you're a Wolf fanboy, this is a really good chance for you to start tinkering with this deck and playing it. So our next deck is Jeskai Inventions, and was inspired by zkiihne, who went 5-0 in a Magic Online League. This deck is named after a new card in Throne of Eldraine called Fires of Invention, and this card reads, you can only cast spells only during your turn, and you can only cast no more than 2 spells each turn. You may cast spells with a converted mana cost less than or equal to the number of lands you control without paying their mana costs. Wow. This card has the potential to be bonkers. For those of you who don't know, whenever a card breaks the first rule of Magic, which is that spells cost mana, there's always a potential for busted things to happen. With that in mind, for this build, we've paired up Fires of Invention with Planeswalkers. Our goal is to have some early and mid-game spells to control any threats our opponents may have, and then to play Fires of Invention as soon as possible to gain tempo over our opponent. Some Planeswalkers in this deck include Narset, Sarkhan, Teferi, Ugin, all of who can help us draw cards or control the board very well. However, our main power actually comes from Fae of Witches and its adventure portion that can conveniently be cast right after Fires of Intervention. Fae of Wishes kind of makes this deck a toolbox deck, and it essentially can grab any answer we need in our sideboard. And in our sideboard, we have board wipes, counterspells, threats, pretty much anything we need to deal with different decks and situations. The rest of the main deck just includes more removal and board wipes and a bunch of dual lands to help out with the mana base. Anyways, I won't go too deep into this build specifically, mainly because I don't think I found the refined list for this archetype yet. I mainly wanted to pull out this list because I wanted to highlight the power of this card. I guarantee you that if people are able to find the right list for this card, it's going to be a dangerously absurd deck. So, let's quickly go over why this deck is good. Well, for one pure reason, and it's that we've broke a rule of Magic. Now, is this deck for you? Well, if you like breaking rules of Magic and you like free things, this deck is the one for you. For this specific build, if you like toolbox strategies, I also think this would be a really fun deck to play. So if Planeswalkers are your jam and board wipes and being toolboxy is your jam, then consider playing this deck. So Throne of Eldraine added a lot of new cards to try and support Mardu Knights. However, most people are mainly running 2-color Knight combinations because it's just more consistent and doesn't run into as many mana issues. Tournament Grounds was a good addition, but not enough to make the mana base consistent for 3 colors. For this video, I chose to go with Orzhov Knights inspired by Jim Davis, just because I found it more enjoyable to play and had more success with it. The focus of this deck is just to be aggressive. Worthy Knight and Acclaimed Contender are 2 cards that help make this deck as strong as it is. Worthy Knight is going to give us a very wide board in no time, while Acclaimed Contender is just card advantage that we need to keep our Knight engine going. Some other cards that are doing a lot of work for this deck is Smitten Swordmaster and Order of Midnight. Smitten Swordmaster pushed so much more consistent damage than I initially thought and has been the winning card in a lot of my games. Order of Midnight is also a great attacker for 2 mana and combos really well with Smitten Swordmaster if it's in the graveyard. Anyways, for the rest of the deck, Knight of Ebon Legion and Venom Knight are just really strong 1-drops. Corpse Knight from 2020 is just a great addition that racks up a lot of damage over time, and Wintermoor Commander has proven to be a great attacker alongside other creatures. Murderous Rider, as we know, is already really darn good, so we have that in the deck, and Midnight Reaper helps get us the card advantage we need to keep our engine going. Finally in the deck, we have Disfigure to help us deal with our opponent's creatures, and just 1 copy of Circle of Loyalty as our top end finisher. So why is this deck good? Well, first of all, it's a tribal deck, and basically that means that there's a lot of synergy amongst the cards, and that'll get us a lot of value over time. Number 2, a lot of the cards can also deal damage outside of combat, which makes it really easy to push through that last little bit of damage we need to finish in an aggro strategy. Now, this deck is for you if you're looking to play a tribal deck in Magic that actually has a legitimate chance in succeeding, or if you're looking for an aggro strategy that can also chip in damage from a variety of sources other than just combat. Anyways, that's it for this week's video. Now, I know that this list was my top 5 list for standard decks that I had most fun with, but which deck have you had the most success with? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, please remember to leave a like and consider subscribing for more content. Thanks again for watching, I really do appreciate it. This is Brother signing out. Peace.